Right, let's get this started. I'm gonna have to keep showing my face because the last time I got flashed up saying, oh, we've noticed inactivity. Just give it a second to notify folks. Guys, this is Game of Thrones, episode 2, the House of Stuart. Yeah, so we're going into the house of King James. Have you ever watched Game of Thrones? Any Game of Thrones fans here? We'll wait for, I'm waiting for TikTok to send a message around that I've gone live. As soon as the message goes around and I see a couple of people's heads pop up, I'll go ahead and start the presentation. But if you see on the board, actually, if you've ever come across this type of information, this information is a relook at history, medieval Europe, the Moors, the history of the British royal family. Today, we did episode 1 yesterday, yeah? Game of Thrones, House of Tudor was episode 1. Today is episode 2, and episode 2 is based on King James. So we're pivoting around King James, right? And the House of Stuart, which is a royal house. Yeah, and we'll delve into the history of the British royal family. So let's go. Let's start this. For anyone who's interested in the slideshow presentations coming in person, the next one is on the 27th of this month at Leicester African Caribbean Centre. Everyone's welcome. TZT Book Mafia, let's dance. So here's a picture of who history calls King James, the 6th James of Scotland and the 1st James of England. So according to official history, this is an image of King James of England, yeah, the 1st of England and the 6th of Scotland by Crispin de Passy the Elder. And this was published in 1604, okay? So that's who they tell us is King James. Of course, we know what has happened with history and the falsification of history. Here you see Lord Darnley, or Lord Henry Darnley. Lord Henry Darnley is a very important character. Why he's important is because he's actually the father of who we call King James, the 6th of Scotland and the 1st of England. So this is King James's dad, yeah? Lord Henry Darnley of Scotland, okay? And he was the 2nd husband of Mary, Queen of Scots, yeah, who is King James, his mother. So here you see on one side the image, official image, certified image of King James, the 6th of England, the 6th of Scotland, the 1st of England, and you see him side of his father, who's Lord Darnley, or Lord, who's Henry Stuart. He's known as Lord Darnley, okay? Ancient and Modern Britons, Volume 1, David McRitchie, published in 1884. Thus, the legends and the history of the Scottish Highlands are both witnesses to the existence of a purely black people. The Welsh traditions bear a similar testimony. The hero Peredur, son of Evra, discovers a company of bald, swarthy youths sitting at the hall door of a black, and then it cuts off. But we already we broke down the meaning of the word swarthy. If you're unfamiliar with the word swarthy, do a quick Google in your phone after on the word 𝐤𝑄𝐄 and what it means and how it was used to describe people, okay? So that's King James and his dad, Lord Henry Stuart or Lord Darnley, yeah? So now we're going to get into the fact that the colonialism we talk about and attribute to a specific group of people in the world, and we blame those people for our dehumanization. I'm being very careful with words, okay? I don't want to offend nobody or the algorithm. There's a particular person who started up this imperialist, colonialist mentality that swept through the European royalty and nobility and parliaments and ended up in colonialism. Let's use that word, okay? So this is a woman and a man in the Americas, yeah? A wife and husband with their child. These are the people that were met in indigenous lands, in the indigenous lands of America. This is how the Indians looked when they went there, okay? And bear in mind, there was no country called India around during this time. When they went over to the Americas and colonized the Americas and started using terms like Indians for the people that they met over there, there was no country yet created called India. Just bear that in mind. Here's another picture of King James in his cowboy hat. So the argument's done because all of his real pictures look exactly the same. You can see the resemblance in all of his authentic images. And this is an authentic image of King James, yeah? And he reigned from 1603 to 1625. So we're talking about the 15th century, the House of Stuart. And this is when Scotland and England were merged into one kingdom, when Britain was being forged, let's say that. Here he is again in all his regalia. This must have been when he was coronated, okay? Because most royalty, European royalty, they have a court photographer or a court, the person who does all their portraits, okay? For the entire duration of their reign. So there will be certain dates when a king or queen, it's expected that they'll have a portrait drawn on that day, like if it's a jubilee or even on a coronation day. The day of coronation, the court painter or the portrait guy will come and do a portrait on that day and put his name on the bottom, and he will sign and date it. So if you see any images of the kings and queens of Europe and it just says anonymous painter, then that's probably a forged painting, because anonymous painters or people who draw portraits, anonymous people, don't get to do a portrait of the royalty or the black nobility. You have to be a somebody. You have to be recognized. So when a lot of these images started to be changed around the time of the Civil War with Oliver Cromwell, they started, how you can tell a lot of these pictures have been changed and different than what's written about these guys, because in the description, it tells you how they look. The description is more reliable. The written words, first-hand accounts, written words are more reliable than pictures, because 97%, I'll repeat it again, 97% of the images that's attached to British history had been destroyed. It started in the time of Henry VIII, who we just did a presentation on him yesterday. Henry VIII and Thomas Cromwell. Yeah, Thomas Cromwell's cousin through his sister down the line, Oliver Cromwell, continued in the time of the Cromwell interregnum, or the civil war between Charles I and Cromwell. A lot of these images were destroyed. Today we only have 3% of them left. So this is an image of James, by the grace of God, King of England and Scotland and France and Ireland. So he was not only King of England and Scotland, he was also King of France and King of Ireland. And a lot of people don't highlight the fact that the blacks from Scotland, in Scotland, are related to the French and the Plantagenets. When the Normans came over to England and the Plantagenets came over, a lot of them went up into Scotland. So houses like the House of Stuart with King James, they're actually related to the house of Louis XIV. Louis XIV and them was their distant cousins. And families like the Habsburgs family in the Netherlands, Holland, with William of Orange and all of those type of characters, All of these are cousins. They're related. That's why they marry each other and keep it in the family. Do you understand? So it was King James who was responsible for supercharging what we term today as chattel slavery, or the dehumanization of indigenous people. Colonialism started with the House of Stuart in the reign of King James from 1603 to 1625. Remember, Virginia, which was the first English slave colony in America, Virginia, that happened in 1619. That turned into the corporation today that we call the United States of America. So that began in 1619, meaning that began in the reign, under the reign of King James. That's why in Virginia, which was considered the colonies, yeah, the Caribbean and parts of America like New England, Virginia was considered the colonies of the British Crown. So that's why in New England, Virginia, one of the slave cities or slave encampments was named after King James. And so it was called Jamestown. That's the reason why it's called Jamestown. Okay? So this dude is the one responsible for supercharging the dehumanization, what we call slavery today. And make note, first it was the Spanish, yeah? And then it was the French. The Spanish Empire happened, Columbus and all of that stuff. And so it was the Spanish that was doing all the colonizing in the West first. When they fell off, the French became the power in Europe. So you had the French Empire. So then you had France doing the same thing, like all Louisiana and all them places. That was a French thing. The English bought that off the French. You understand what I'm saying? Then after the French Empire declined, after Napoleon was defeated, now we got the British Empire. And this British Empire is now it's at its power with people like King James on the throne. They supercharged this thing that we're calling dehumanization. They supported it in all of their colonies. The same thing happened with French kings like Louis XIV and stuff. He was signing things into law to allow slavery in French colonies of African people or melanated people or indigenous people. Do you see what I'm saying? Let's dance. So this is the seal of Jamaica for the real Taino Indians. So that's what Indians look like in Jamaica when they're telling you about Caribs and Arawaks and all of these people that in our mind, we're programmed to think they look like Indians from India today. We think they look like that. But when they're telling you about these indigenous people in America and the Caribbean and stuff, this is how the people looked. And remember, the word India actually comes from the word indigo. So the word Indian is implying the complexion of the person. It's the same as saying Moor. It's the same as saying Kushite. You understand what I'm saying? Morenos, Kushite. It's the same thing. Indian is from the word indigo. Because remember, again, there was no country called India in this time. What we're talking about, 1492 and 1500 and 1600s. India didn't come around until the Raj went there to Hindustan and created political borders which is part of the British Empire and the British East India Company. That's way later. So when you see them using the word Indian in reference to like 500 years before the country of India has even appeared on the map, they talking about the color of the person in the form of indigos. Do you understand what I'm saying? So here in Jamaica, it's the same thing, Caribbean, because remember the whole of the Americas, that's North, South, Central, and the Caribbean was referred to as India Superior. That's what they call the whole region, India Superior or India proper. And that was based on the people, the indigenous people that they found there. Those people that they tell you is native today, those are not native. Those came later, okay? So that's the seal of Jamaica. I just put that in there because my mother's Jamaican. Okay, so it was this guy, King James, who was the one who supercharged the dehumanization that today we call colonialism. It blossomed out into colonialism because all the countries followed suit in Europe. Every nobility and royal family was following in the footsteps of the House of Stuart and King James, okay? So now let's read about his mum. Mary Queen of Scots, House of Stuart, 8th of December 1542 till the 8th of February 1587, also known as Mary Stuart or Mary the First of Scotland, was Queen Regnant of Scotland from 14th December 1542 to 24th of July 1567, and Queen Consort of France. So she was also the Queen Consort of France from the 10th of July 1559 to the 5th of December 1560. Mary was the only surviving legitimate child of King James V of Scotland. Yeah, so King James V of Scotland is the grandfather of King James VI of Scotland. King James V is Mary Queen of Scots' father. Okay, she was 6 days old when her father died, and she was crowned 9 months later. So she was crowned before she was even 1 year old. In 1558, she married Francis Dauphin of France as her first husband. He ascended the French throne, so she was married to the King of France. He ascended the French throne as King Francis II in 1559, and we'll get to the French because you'll have a culture shock here too. This is how they reset the timeline from the old Tartarian Empire and changed it into what we're witnessing now. Remember, it's not just mud floods and advanced technology, it's also a genealogical reset where they changed the real royalties and the nobility of this world and replaced them with actors. Okay, so and Mary became queen of France until she was widowed on the 5th of December 1560. Yeah, so he ascended the French throne in 1559. He was dead in 1560, so less than a year later this guy's dead. Yeah, Francis II of France, King Francis II of France. Mary then returned to Scotland, arriving in Leith on 19th of August 1561, 1 year later. 4 years later, she married her first cousin, Henry Stuart, or Lord Darnley. Their union was unhappy, and in February 1567, there was a huge explosion at their house, and Darnley was found unalived, apparently strangled in the garden. You understand? So this is deep. This is just like Game of Thrones. Guys, if you can, send me some hearts, because I need the hearts to make this bigger, to show this work to more people. So if this is work that you're interested in and you want to see more of it, make sure that you like and you subscribe and you're sending me some hearts and stuff, all right? Because it's hard telling the truth out here. To tell the truth out here nowadays takes a whole lot of bravery. She soon married the 4th Earl of Bothwell. Wow, so this is the third husband, who was generally believed to be Darnley's murderer. Okay, so they're saying it could have been a setup where her and the new husband, the 4th Earl of Bothwell, yeah, they unalived Darnley, yeah? Following an uprising against the couple, Queen Mary was imprisoned in 𝆥𝆤𝓆𝓄𝓃𝓄𝓏 Castle on the 15th of June, and she was forced to abdicate in favor of her 1-year-old son, King James VI. So all them people that say King James slept with his mum, that's just lies, because she gets beheaded, yeah, while he's still a child. He's already the king at 1 year old, just like his mum was. Okay, she had to abdicate, and then she was beheaded just down the road. Okay, after an unsuccessful attempt to regain the throne, Mary fled to England down here to Leicester, seeking the protection of her first cousin, once removed, Queen Elizabeth I of England. This is when the seat of power in England wasn't in London. It was just next door, well, in Leicestershire, in 𝆥𝆤𝓆𝓄𝓄𝓃𝓄𝓏. You understand? And the Plantagenets, those like King Edward I, King Edward II, King Edward III, all the way up to Henry VII, those Plantagenet kings, their power base was in 𝆥𝆤𝓆𝓄𝓄𝓃 in Leicestershire. You understand what I'm saying? Okay. Yo, guys, I'm gonna stop when I get halfway through Charles I. I'm gonna stop, because I don't want this to drag on too long. I'll come back later, don't worry. I'll just charge my phone on my laptop and I'll come back and I'll finish it off. But I don't like when they drag on too long. It makes it a bit boring. So what I'm gonna do, because it goes all the way to Charles II, when I get halfway through Charles I, or at least to the end of the Cromwell Charles I thing, we'll stop, and then I'll come back later and finish it off, all right? Yeah, so she came to Elizabeth, because all of them got on. Mary Queen of Scots, Elizabeth, Lady Jane Grey, Mary, who's Elizabeth's sister, they all got on, yeah? So she's come to seek help from her cousins, from Elizabeth, yeah? Mary had previously claimed Elizabeth's throne as her own and was considered the legitimate sovereign of England. She's saying, yo, I'm supposed to be the queen, even though they get on. This is Game of Thrones. Yo, I'm supposed to be the queen. Do you understand? I'm considered the legitimate sovereign of England by many English Catholics, including participants in the Rising of the North. Perceiving her as a threat, Queen Elizabeth, her cousin, who they get on, had her arrested. This is Game of Thrones. I got to protect my throne. You understand? After 19 years in custody, that's a life sentence. 19 years in custody in a number of castles and manor houses. So it's like she's on house arrest. In England, she was tried and executed for treason, her alleged involvement in 3 plots to assassinate Elizabeth. So they wiped her out. You understand? Mary Queen of Scots. And this is a picture right here of Mary Queen of Scots. And you'll see the drawing of her, Mary Queen of Scots, and then her when she's a bit older. I'm not sure how good these pictures show up on the screen because of the light. I apologize for having the TV in this position right near the window and all of that. At some point, if this thing does grow, I'll fix all of that. Do you understand? But I'm just here to present you guys with this work, man, and see if we can grow the radius so more people can be in contact with this rising truth, because this is the stuff that they hidden from us. I'm going somewhere with this. Please bear with me. There's a reason why this particular part or segment of, I should say, world history, because the history of the Moors is not just black history or history for black people. It's a massive chunk of world history. Whereas if we want to figure out what happened with Tartaria and the old timeline and how we got into the position we're in today in this world, then we have got to get past racism and all them type of stuff and start looking into this in depth. And I'm one of them people who is presenting you with this work. A lot of people would turn their nose up at it. But I'm telling you, if you just take a little time to really look and scrutinize what I'm saying here and compare it to what we've been told, you will see that, yo, this guy's onto something. I'm telling you guys. I ain't writing books for nothing. Right, I digress. James VI and First, House of Stuart, 19th of June, 1566, till the 27th of March, 1625, was the King of Scots as James VI, from 24th of July, 1567, and King of England and Ireland as James I, from the union of the English and Scottish crowns, on 24th of March, 1603, until his death. The kingdoms of England and Scotland were individual sovereign states with their own parliaments, judiciary and laws, though both were ruled by James in personal union. He became king. This is the pretext for Britain or the United Kingdom. He became King of Scotland at the age of 13 months, yeah, succeeding his mother Mary Queen of Scots, who had been compelled to abdicate in his favour. 4 different regents governed during his minority, because remember, he's a kid. So all the way till 1603, up until he's a grown man, there's other people that are really making all the laws and ruling in his place as the Regency Council. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah, which ended officially in 1578, though he did not gain full control of his government until 1583. In 1603, he succeeded the last Tudor monarch of England and Ireland, Elizabeth I, who died without an issue. She never had no children. He continued to reign in all 3 kingdoms for 22 years, often using the title King of Great Britain and Ireland, until his death in 1625 at the age of 58. He died young. He based himself in England, so he didn't base himself in Scotland, he's Scottish. But he based himself in England, the largest of the 3 realms. It's larger than Ireland, it's larger than Scotland. Yeah, I'm basing myself in England. From 1603, that's when he based himself in England. James began the plantation, yeah? The plantation of Ulster and of North America, okay? The same James that you will hear a lot of our people speaking on him like he's some type of good guy. Like, just because we found out he's black or he's Moorish in heritage, or he's Israelite, all that should cancel out all the evil this man's done. We should look at this guy like some type of, yo, you understand? No, this guy was the #1 colonialist of his time. He supercharged that. You understand what I'm saying? The Europeans of today often like to use words that will cause confusion when discussing things like race and appearance of melanated people. I'm changing words, guys, so bear with me. So as to make them sound more, they change the words of melanated people, change to so we think they're not melanated people, especially if they're important people. Such is the case with Queen Elizabeth I, who is described as swarthy. We already showed you how she looked based on a fantastic remake, AI remake, based on her own pictures and x-rays, and wow. So first, let us clearly define swarthy. This is Webster's dictionary, and it says, of a dark color, complexion, or cast. Etymology of swarthy, alteration of swarthy, from swart, yeah, plus or take the Y. Old English swart, yeah, which means in all cases black. In the book, let's just get past this because they're giving me too much words to change and it's not that important. We already explained this in episode 1 with the House of Tudor. So here is another engraving. This is actually an engraving of King James, yeah? So this is not just some regular picture. This is King James of England by Hendrik Hondius, yeah? So you can see the name is put on there so you can see who did this portrait or engraving, yeah? He looks like a horrible man, I gotta say. Yeah, so you know how people talk about how we all know he had the Bible translated from Latin into English by Shakespeare and his 46 scholars, and then you hear other people saying, oh, but do you know about his other book? He wrote a book about demons, 𝐤𝐄𝐄𝑚𝐄, yeah? And so they will make a point about that, which is true, but that's not the only book that he wrote. He also wrote a book about the theory of monarchy and the divine right of kings. If anybody's watching this that watched yesterday's, I might repeat myself on a few things just to get the message out, yeah? But the book that he wrote on the theory of monarchy and the divine right of kings was a book he wrote to give instructions to Prince Henry. Prince Henry at the time was 4. This is Prince Henry of Wales. And so he wanted to instruct Prince Henry of how he should conduct himself as a king. So he wrote the theory of monarchy in 1597 to 98. James wrote 2 works, The True Law of 3 Monarchies and 𝐤𝐤𝐆𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿, the Royal Gift, in which he argued a theological basis for monarchy. In The True Law, he sets out the divine right of kings, explaining that for biblical reasons, kings are higher beings than other men, though the highest bench is the slideriest to sit upon. The document proposes an absolutist theory of monarchy by which a king may impose new laws by royal prerogative, but must also pay heed to tradition and God, who would stir up such scourges as pleases him for punishment of wicked kings. So what he's saying in all that is, as a king, they're higher than normal men, and they don't answer to nobody. Nobody can, the king doesn't have to answer to nobody. The only one that the king has to answer to is God. So if the king conducts himself in an unrighteous manner, then God will be his judge. God will be the one to judge him as an unrighteous king. But no man, he's saying, he's got the right to judge him because he's a king. That's his view in this book, his theory of monarchy, his 2 books, The True Law of 3 Monarchies and 𝐤𝐤𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿, that's how he thinks, yeah? And this work, 𝐤𝐤𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿, written as a book of instruction for the 4-year-old Prince Henry, provides a more practical guide to kingship. The work is considered by experts to be well written and perhaps the best example of James's prose. James' advice concerning parliaments, which he understood as merely the king's head court, yeah, foreshadows his difficulties with the English Commons. Hold no parliaments, he tells Henry, but for the necessity of new laws, which would be but seldom. In The True Law, James maintains that the king owns his realm as a feudal lord owns his fief, because kings arose before any estates or ranks of men, before any parliaments were holden or laws made, and by them was the land distributed. By the kings was the land distributed, which at first was wholly theirs, before any parliaments. And so it follows of necessity that kings were the authors and makers of the laws, and not the laws the makers of the kings. That's his view. Okay, so he wrote more than just the book on 𝐤𝐤𝐆𝐿𝐿𝐿, yeah? In total, 9 Stuart monarchs ruled just Scotland, yeah, Scotland alone. 9 of them ruled in Scotland from 1371 until 1603. After this, there was a union of the crowns under King James VI, who we're speaking about, or the first, who had become the senior genealogical claimant to all of the holdings of the extinct House of Tudor, because they were related to the House of Tudor also. Thus, there were 6 Stuart monarchs who ruled both England and Scotland, as well as Ireland, although the Stuart era was interrupted by an interregnum lasting from 1649 to 1660 as a result of the English Civil War. Additionally, at the foundation of the Kingdom of Great Britain, after the Acts of Union, which politically united England and Scotland, the first monarch was Anne of Great Britain. After her death, all the holdings were passed to the House of Hanover under the terms of the Act of Settlement, which means Catholics can't come on the throne. Yeah? So these engravings, these are not just pictures. These, I've showed them individually anyway. Those engravings are authentic engravings of King James. And they show you what race he is. This, if for anybody that doesn't know, is called the Stone of Scone. Has anybody ever been heard about the Stone of Scone? The Stone of Scone was used by Scottish kings. All of them were crowned upon the Stone of Scone. When a king was crowned, he was crowned upon this stone. This stone was said to have come from Ireland to Scotland and come to Ireland from Israel, the Israelites. This was supposed to be the stone that Jacob rested his head upon when he had the dream of the ladder and the angels coming down the ladder. So when the Israelites moved from Israel, it's proposed that they took this stone to Ireland, and then at a certain time, Scottish people who were related to Irish people, it ended up in Scotland, let's just put it that way. And the Scottish kings crowned themselves on it. Edward I from the House of Plantagenet in the 1300s, yeah, he took this stone when he ravaged Scotland. He went up there and messed up Scotland and messed up Wales, yeah. When he went up in Scotland, he stole this and brought it back down here to England, to Westminster, and put it underneath their throne. They made a special throne for it here in England, and they put this underneath the throne. And all the English kings crowned themselves on this Stone of Scone. I'm sure even Queen Elizabeth did. I don't think Charles III did, because I think it was in 2012, they gave it back to Scotland. Imagine, they gave it back to Scotland from where they took it, and it's in display in Scotland at some monastery or something. But that's the history of the Stone of Scone, for anyone who doesn't know. And this is all in the book, Treasures in the Sand, yeah? There are certain pictures in here that is just to reiterate that this guy was a colonizer, yeah? So I'm not going to stop the pictures and get into that. I want to finish this anyway, so I don't want it to drag too long. Right, Charles I, yeah? Charles English Parliament, this is after his dad now. Charles I comes to the throne, yeah? And Charles English Parliament enacted laws known as the Clarendon Code, designed to shore up the position of the re-established Church of England. Charles acquiesced to the Clarendon Code, even though he himself favoured a policy of religious tolerance. No, hold on, this is the wrong slide. This is talking about Charles II, guys. It should be talking about Charles I, but let me just go ahead anyway. This is Charles II, yeah? So in his time, you know, the Act of Settlement, which stopped Catholics from coming onto the throne. There was a lot of chaos back and forth between Catholics and non-Catholics, yeah? So when it came to who's going to be the next king, the first thing people did was like, yo, is any of his relative or the heirs Catholics? If they are, they're cancelled out. And so you had a thing where certain people lied about their religion. Certain people were actually Catholics, but so that they didn't get banned from the throne, they acted like they Protestants, or they acted like they're not Catholics. Do you understand what I'm saying? So there was a lot of suspecting of people being secret Catholics and stuff like that. And this was going on in the time of Charles II. Now that Charles I, his dad, had been beheaded, yeah, and Cromwell basically ruled as a dictator for the next 10 years. So after that 10-year dictatorship period of Cromwell, yeah, they've now brought back in the monarchy, but they've put terms down, like you can't be a Catholic, you can't do this, you can't do that. So it's no longer an absolute monarchy like in the time of King James and Henry VIII, where they can just spend how they want and they can shut down Parliament when they want and stuff. Now, Parliament is getting more power and the royal houses are getting less power. So there's a tug of war going on. Do you understand? Just to give you some context, yeah? So Charles is brought out this Clarendon Code, even though he himself favoured a policy of religious tolerance. They don't want religious tolerance in England at that time. They don't want no Catholics on the throne. But this guy was a secret Catholic, Charles II. So he's trying to find a middle ground. You understand what I'm trying to say? The major foreign policy issue of Charles' early reign was the Second Anglo-Dutch War, yeah? So there was a war between Dutch and England going on at that time, yeah? In 1670, Charles entered into the secret Treaty of Dover, an alliance with his first cousin, King Louis the 14th of France. So that's his first cousin, like I told you, these Bourbon kings in France and the Habsburgs in Holland and stuff. They're related to some of these kings that came on the throne in England, like Charles II, through his mum, Henrietta Maria, okay? A Moorish woman. We've got her images, okay? Louis agreed to aid Charles in the Third Anglo-Dutch War and pay Charles a pension, and Charles secretly promised to convert to Roman Catholicism at an unspecified future date. He did when he died. Charles attempted to introduce religious freedom for Catholics and Protestant dissenters with his 1672 Royal Declaration of Indulgence, but the English Parliament forced him to withdraw it. In 1679, Titus Oates' revelations of a supposed popish plot sparked the exclusion crisis when it was revealed that Charles's brother and heir, James, Duke of York, was a Roman Catholic. The crisis saw the birth of the pro-exclusion Whig, this is a political party, and anti-exclusion Tory parties, yeah? Tory party. So you had the Whig and the Tory party. This is when they were born, the same Tories now that are running this joint. Hold on, is it the Tories that are running the joint? Or Labour? Well, anyway, the Tories, man, Richie Sunak, Boris Johnson, all of that, this is when they were born, yeah? And they were anti-exclusion. They didn't want to exclude Catholics, yeah? The Whigs, they wanted Catholics excluded. You understand what I'm saying? Charles sided with the Tories, yeah? Obviously, he don't want Catholics excluded because he's a secret Catholic. Following the discovery of the Rye House plot to murder Charles and James in 1683, some Whig leaders were killed or forced into exile. Charles dissolved the English Parliament, dissolved the Parliament in 1681, and ruled alone until his death on 6 February 1685. So for the last 4 years, he shut down Parliament. He was received into the Roman Catholic Church on his deathbed. Charles was properly known as the Merry Monarch in reference to both the liveliness and hedonism of his court and the general relief at the return to normality after over a decade of rule or dictatorship by Oliver Cromwell and the Puritans. Charles's wife, Catherine of Braganza, bore no children, but Charles acknowledged at least 12 illegitimate children by various mistresses. As illegitimate children were excluded from the succession, he was succeeded by his brother James. I think this is a good place to stop because I shouldn't have even read that. I should have went into Charles I first, but somehow I've put Charles II slide before I even got into Charles I. So when I come back, we've spoke about King James, we've spoke about Mary, Queen of Scots. So when I come back, we'll get into Charles I, and then we'll go back into Charles II, and boom, the House of Stuart will be done, and we'll get to the next house, which will be something like the House of Plantagenet. Guys, if you got hearts to send the hearts because it helps with the algorithm. I'm a person that is always restricted because of what I'm saying. So if you want this message to get out and reach more people, you got to start putting hearts and likes or roses or however they do it here on TikTok to help push this message out. That's you doing your part. I will be back later when there won't be light in the background, the back of the TV. It will be darker, so it will be, hopefully it will be a better experience. But I do hope you learned something from this, and you will join me when I come back. I'll take out a couple clippings and I'll post it on my TikTok or my Instagram to encourage more persons to get involved in this and unlearn and relearn, because our re-education is up to us. It's not up to the authorities, it's not up to schools or none of that type of stuff. It's up to us, and we've got to take it back into our own hands and put the value back on it. If we're just on social media scrolling and learning from social media, then we will become our own worst enemies in a sense, we already have become our own worst enemies, and we're all trapped in this digital drugs. You understand? So to help me, if you want to help this work, then do what you can from your side to push this message out. Come and support the thing. Follow us on Instagram at TZT Book Mafia. Follow us on YouTube at TZT Book Mafia. Follow us on Facebook at 𝐤𝐄𝐄ℎ_Memnon_KKR. Namastu, Mafia for life.